Good afternoon. It's 5 minutes past 2. It's time for the inquiry to resume. Just before I invite Mr. Cambourne to ask any questions in re-examination of Mr. Lonergan, there's just a number of things I want to run through and also just mention. Firstly, Mrs. Taplin advises me that she's received statements of common ground with the two district councils, Cambridge City Council and South Cambridgeshire District Council, so thank you for providing those.
So do you want hard copy? Because
if you have a couple handy, that would probably be helpful. Thank you very much. And hopefully they'll be on the website in the inquiry documents section shortly. Just before lunch, I raised a query about some of the drawings. Now, I think I've spotted what the issue is. Looking at the longitudinal sections, and I'm looking at sheet number 11 of 17.
These are on the deemed works plans or the deemed planning?
These are the section. These are the longitudinal sections. So I think these are in the deposited order plans.
Yes.
Yeah. So number 11. This is what was confusing me. It looks like, I think on all the other drawings, the red line is showing the upper surface of the busway, and the green line is showing the existing ground level. But I think on this drawing, the notation has got switched. So firstly, is that right?
And that would explain why it's...
Yes.
Yeah.
So obviously there is an issue on those drawings. Can I just ask the applicant to, obviously I haven't looked at every single drawing, to just double check to make...
You know, and if they need to be amended, sir, then we will provide you with that.
Yes, I mean, if that is the extent of it, obviously I can see from the other sections that the bus line notation has been in red, so as I say, it does look like an error. But yes, if perhaps you could report back to me on Tuesday, Mr. Henderson, just on that particular point. Thank you. There was, I did ask again, I don't know whether anyone's had a chance to, just if someone could signpost me to the best document to look at the details of the greenway. I don't know if anyone's had a chance to do that yet. If not, do it later.
So you mentioned you'd looked at the outline business case.
Yes.
And that, I don't think we've got a better reference than the outline business case. And Mr. Henderson will give me the reference in a moment.
949.
Yes, I've got
PDF 48, and that so it gives you the preferred option at figure 213. Now the caveat is, I suspect that some of the CPF case is based on a further extension to the house.
Yeah, I think that was mentioned.
Which you're not going to
yes.
find in that document.
I was just going to ask Mr. Parker whether the same question, in terms of the information that's already been submitted, is that the best place for me to go to look at the information?
In terms... Oh, sorry, this seems to be working. In terms of the committed greenway,
Yep.
yes, and there's also some information in Mr. Lee's plans which were extracted. I appreciate the panel's reluctance to accept new documents into the inquiry, but there is a useful plan attached on the council's website which shows the committed route and the indicative route to which reference has been made. So insofar as you would like a plan which of that route, we can supply that, but I'm conscious.
Is that a public document?
Yes, I understand it. Yes.
Yeah, I think that'd be helpful just to understand your case, Mr. Parker. So, yeah, I think whilst, as you correctly pointed out, we really don't want additional documents submitted. I think in that case, that would be helpful to myself and Mr. Clegg. If that could be
I will ask my team to send it to the programme.
Seems sensible to me, because things do arise during an inquiry where you do need additional information. But if we could see it before it goes in, so that we can check that it is the most up-to-date document as far as we can check as well, and then when it goes in, there's no further discussion about its provenance.
I think that'd be really helpful. So, if Mr. Parker and Mr. Cameron, you could just, once you've located the document, have a discussion between yourselves, and then hopefully you can be provided with both of you saying that's okay. If there is a dispute, you can highlight what the issues are. Thank you. And the final point I was going to make, just I think again, it's been quite helpful to have a slightly earlier start to sessions. So I think our intention is to start at 9:30 on Tuesday. But I just wanted to double check, because I'm conscious that some people are probably travelling quite a long way. So whether that would cause any particular problems.
Tuesday, it's likely to be particularly beneficial because we're hoping Mr. Parker's not available on the Wednesday, and it would be better, we hope, that we would complete the evidence of Mr. Baker. I don't envisage we'll get as far as his cross-examination today, but we start with his cross-examination, then we've got Mr. Saunders, then we've got Ms. Reason, all of whom Mr. Parker wants to ask questions of. So if we start at 9:30 with a fair wind, and timings, taking up the credits and making a few debits, we should get there.
Okay, thank you.
Just on that, I mean, we have just done the calculations and it should be fine on Tuesday. The only thing I raise now as a possibility is whether, if we're not quite finished by 5 o'clock, to what extent there's scope to sit a little bit longer to make sure we are finished. And I just raise that as a possibility. I appreciate different views, and I don't know whether it's possible, but.
I mean, it's certainly possible. Obviously, we've just got to be conscious of both commitments that some people might have where they need to leave and have certainty of being able to leave, and also just fatigue of participants.
Yeah.
But I can ask a question now around the room. And again, don't feel that you've got to agree with either Mr. Parker or the inspectors. Would a slightly later finish on the Tuesday cause anyone any particular issues?
So I suspect not on the Tuesday, but just as a matter of principle, as you've noted, when you do an inquiry that goes on this long, if you're coming along on a single day, which Mr. Parker will be, then it seems fine sitting later. But I mean, fatigue affects you both, sirs, it affects us, and I think just as a matter of principle, it's better to stick to the timings because in general, but we can be flexible as and when.
Thank you. Has anybody else?
I'll just give you the number.
Oh, thank you. Yeah. Well, in that case, say what, and I quite agree with what Mr. Cameron said. We don't really want to do it as a matter of course. I think if it's particularly helpful in terms of people's availability and making sure that we stick to the programme, having it as an exception, that might be okay. But yeah, I think apart from that, but thanks for flagging that up. Okay, is there anything you want to raise, Richard? In that case, Mr. Cameron, I shall hand over to you.
Thank you very much, sir. Now, Mr. Lonergan, re-examination. As I said to Mr. Whitehouse, if any question from me is unclear, or if you need to find time to get the document, please say so. And if the question is unclear, please tick me off rather than try and answer something which isn't clear. And we'll take it at we're not going to go too fast, because witnesses always tell me that re-examination is the worst bit. But I'm sure it won't be in this case. Can we start, please, with the maintenance track issues? And you'll remember at the beginning of your cross-examination, you were asked some questions about the maintenance track. Do you recall that?
Yes.
And if we can just have to hand your rebuttal proof, page 6, paragraph 3.2.2, and you were asked questions on this.
So I'll just get it up. Sorry, the page number again, please.
6.
Yep, on there.
And I'd like, first of all, to ask you about the point that you make at Roman 4. So it's 322A4, and it's the safe evacuation route point.
Yes.
Do you have that?
Yes.
Now, if you have an incident which requires evacuation, if you don't have a track to evacuate people, how do you, and you've got a bus that's broken down or has had an accident and is full of passengers, what effect would that have on your ability to evacuate people, in particular disabled, less mobile, and so on?
It would delay it because the bus for carrying out the evacuation would be potentially behind the emergency vehicles and any other vehicles that are there.
And
so make it more difficult.
So make it more difficult.
Slower.
And in terms of getting people off a bus and away, if you don't have the emergency access track, how do you do that, and what effect does it have on the running of the service?
The first effect it has is that there isn't space to turn around a bus on the busway. So the evacuating bus will come along the track, be loaded up and carry on in the same direction. So if we can't do that, the evacuating bus is going to come up, or smaller buses would come up behind the bus with a problem and then be loaded a bit more slowly and then turned round and sent back the way they came, assuming you couldn't get past it.
Yeah. And in terms of safety, is it safer to do it on a separate track or on the running track?
It's safer to do it on the separate track
And why is that?
because it'll be away from the vehicles that are either dealing with the incident or other buses that are blocked there or other vehicles.
Thank you. And still on the maintenance track, you were asked about works to utilities, maintenance works, and so on. And do you remember some questions were put to you which envisaged you might have traffic light control?
Yes.
If you're going along cutting the grass and you move your vehicle along, park it up, how realistic is it to have traffic light control on a bus route?
It isn't terribly, to be honest. We'd probably put in a long closure and just have it within that.
So, and if you had a long closure,
It would have to be within line of sight for the buses or within the control.
so, and what effect would that have?
Potentially slow them down and
And,
disrupt the service.
and it's envisaged in the questions you were asked that you might have one set of traffic lights, but what happens if you've got a utility operator who you've said you can't control because they're not under the control of the bus operator? You've got a maintenance crew and who are doing grass cutting, another different maintenance crew who might be dealing with something else, road surface, another maintenance crew might be dealing with markings. They all have to get there back and forth. If you have no access track, how does all that work?
Yes, it would seriously disrupt the service, and it would result in potential passengers not coming back to reuse the service.
And I mean, how often do you have to carry out maintenance? I mean, grass grows, trees grow. that presumably happens every season, every year.
I would expect there to be some maintenance going on, certainly at least most weeks and possibly more often.
And as the busway, when the new surface is first laid under your supervision or somebody else's, no doubt it'll all be nice and smooth. But as time goes on, does maintenance become less frequent or more frequent?
More frequent, and again that would help. The maintenance track would help to support that. It'll make it quicker to carry out that maintenance.
And if you've got, no, I think I don't need to ask you anything else about that. So we're now going to go on to the CPPF alternative design, and you were asked quite a lot of questions about that, and you were asked about the speed and the fact that CPPF are putting forward an alternative speed limit of 40 miles an hour, and you were explaining how that was inappropriate for this road in this context.
Yes, referring back to the DMRB, and I think it's 3.65.
Yeah. Can we just, what I'd like to do is to go to your rebuttal appendices.
Yes.
So I'm going to give you a chance to find that.
Yep, got it.
And we've got the list of departures in the appendices, so that's page 34. Do you have that?
I'm just getting
You're
there. Thank
taken
you.
to this.
Yes.
And can we look at departures D07 to D11, please?
Yes.
And we'll see that some of those departures relate to junction visibility and the visibility is reduced to certain levels. Do you see that?
Yes.
And it says, for example, increased risk of collisions involving vehicles exiting from the junction access if the proposed speed limit of 40 miles an hour can't be secured.
Yes.
So that's the issue, visibility. Can we then go, please, to core document 907, which is part of the design manual?
Yes.
You know that, and I want to go to page 16, please.
Just getting to page 16.
Yep. And ideally you'd have both documents open, but if you've got one computer that might be difficult.
Yeah, one's behind the other.
Right. So, and you'll find at page 16, table 210, design speed related parameters. Is that where you've got it? Page 16?
Just about to be. Yes.
So table 210, and this is given in kilometres an hour.
Yes.
So I don't think anybody's going to tell me off if I lead you to 70 kilometres an hour. Is that the equivalent of 40?
Yes.
So this is the 40 mile an hour, and there we've got desirable minimum 120 metres stopping sight distance. Do you have that?
Yes.
So that's at 40. So that's if you reduce the speed limit to 40, that will be the desirable minimum.
Yep.
And then there's a one step below. And if you go back then to your departures table, bearing in mind that 120 metres, So we're back to page 34 in your
Yep,
appendices.
sorry, yes, I'm there.
So if it were possible to reduce to 40, and you've given your reasons why it's not appropriate, the desirable minimum is 120 metres. And if we then look down this list, even at 40, we're looking there, Crome Lee Business Park, junction visibility to the right reduced to approximately 60 metres. Do you have that?
Yes.
So if we got 60 metres and the desirable minimum at 40 miles an hour is 120, does reducing it to 40 solve the problem?
No. It'll still be more than one step below.
Yeah, and the next one, 103 metres below the 120 metres.
Yes.
And
correct.
106, 112, 106. All below the 120.
Yes. Below one step. Sorry, more than one step.
Yeah. So even at 40, would those be departures?
Yes.
Thank you.
Sorry, can I just clarify your previous answer, just for my note? You had the 60 metre visibility, which was D007, but then the others, D008, 9, 10 and 11, we can see they're above the one step below the desirable minimum, which is 90, and I just wanted to check.
I was asking about the 120.
But Mr. Lonergan's answer was they were more than one step below, and I just wanted to make sure whether I'd understood that answer correctly, because...
No, the one step below is 90.
Yeah. His answer was they were more than one step below, and I just wanted to check that I'd read that correctly.
Less. So the first one is more, and the other ones are less.
Yeah, okay, thanks. I just
correct.
wanted to make sure I had that right.
And one. And the final question that I asked you, are they still departures or not? If they're below the desirable minimum.
They're still a departure, but they're much more
Thank
likely
you.
to be approved.
Right. Can we now just turn to the M11 bridge point, please? And if we go to page 40 in the rebuttal appendices,
Yep. Yes.
and page, I've got the right page. Yes, we've got the overbridge at the bottom, cross-section HH.
Yes.
You have that.
With the wing mirrors, yeah.
Yeah, with the wing mirrors bumping into each other. So, in terms of these, I don't think it was suggested to you that this was acceptable.
No.
What was suggested to you was that there may be a solution, and you were taken to a document where options were considered.
Yes.
But let's just look at this cross-section. Would that kind of arrangement, where you get down to 2.8 metres for one lane, 3.1, would that arrangement ever be acceptable?
No.
So even if you, on the CPPF scheme, even if somehow you could overcome all the difficulties near the American Military Cemetery, and we know your view is not viable, what would happen when you got to the M11 overbridge?
It would need either to be widened, replaced, or a new bridge next to it. It couldn't be run as it is on that cross-section.
And so let's then go to core document 936, which you were taken to, please. 936,
That's back to
please.
where we were, isn't it?
Sorry?
Is that back to where we were?
No, it's a different one.
Apologies.
It's the Atkins Rectory Farm Bridge Options Report.
Sorry, yep.
Do you remember that one? You were
Yes,
asked about
yeah.
it.
I just misremembered the number. Thank you.
Yeah. And you were asked a number of questions about the options that were considered in this particular report. Go to page 6. Well, we go to the conclusions. Can we go to section 13 on page 16, please? Option 1, least expensive and least disruptive. However, this option could lead to long queues during peak times.
Yes.
See that? Option 2, detailed comment, then the last sentence. The key drawback of this option is that it can lead to higher risks of accidents and greater congestion due to narrow lanes.
Yes.
And then options 3, 4 and 5A, they would involve diversion of statutory undertakers' apparatus, which can influence the duration of construction and the completion date, but they have proper width lanes.
Yes, I think that's the widening. Yeah.
Yeah. Option 5B, relatively expensive and causes moderate disruption. And cyclists and pedestrians will have a safer means of crossing the M11. However, diversion of statutory undertakers' apparatus can influence the duration of construction and the completion date. And then we look at 14. The following work is required before identifying the best option. Engage with Highways England is number 1.
Yes.
Well, if you're proposing works to a bridge over a motorway, do Highways England have a role?
Yes. They were very vocal on our bridge further south.
Yeah. And so if these recommendations were made before Highways England had been engaged, do we know what Highways England's response is likely to be?
No, they will drive the solution.
Well, you say they would drive
They will
solution.
they will have a strong view on the disruption we're allowed on the motorway.
Yeah. And engineers are always looking for solutions, but Highways England have to consider wider matters. Any indication whether they would, from this report or elsewhere, that they've considered any of these matters or would find any of them acceptable?
I've seen nothing to suggest they've considered them or would find it acceptable. But I will say, when dealing with our busway bridge further south, they were very restrictive in terms of what we could do on the motorway and affecting the slip roads.
So would you expect an easy ride for any of these
No.
options?
No, I'd expect to have to produce a solution that was minimum disruption to the motorway, regardless of the disruption or cost to the proposer.
And are there any of these solutions which will be carried out without disruption to the motorway?
No, all of them will require some sort of road closure on the motorway below.
And if we look at the other an undertaking which has to be done, engage with statutory undertakers. Potential impact on statutory undertakers has been referred to above. Any indication of how that might be dealt with, statutory undertakers?
It will depend upon the utilities that are in the bridge, but they will have a strong view on it. And if we're extending the existing bridge and doing anything with the verges and moving the utilities, they will have a very strong influence on the decision. We might even end up with a temporary diversion and then a permanent diversion afterwards.
Yeah. We then got land purchase.
Yes.
We've got full assessment of the existing bridge. So before you've done an assessment of the existing bridge, do you know whether options such as extending the width of the bridge can be carried out and what they involve?
No, and I think at the beginning they said they haven't got the assessment report.
No. And then you've got ecology, archaeological and environmental desktop studies, detailed traffic flow modelling, something CPPF are keen on, and organise a risk workshop. So any certainty that any of these options could be delivered?
There's no certainty, but with the discussions, there's no certainty of timescale or cost.
Thank you. No other questions on that. Let's just go to, while we got the cross sections, I think this is probably last point, slightly simpler question for you, but can you go to any of the cross sections or do, but I don't need to, it's a matter of principles. If there's a ditch at the side of the road and you widen the road, what happens to the ditch?
It moves out to suit
Well,
as a first pass.
yeah. And if the option that was put to you is, well, you might not need to dig a new ditch because the old ditch could take the drainage, if you widen the road, will the old ditch be there?
No.
Thank you very much. Those are all the questions I've got for you. Thank you, Mr. Lonergan.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lonergan. Thanks.
Thank you very much. So, if you're running off and going home, have a good journey. Yeah, there we go. I just thought I'd say goodbye, but I can't come and say goodbye because I'm here.
I'll just allow Mr. Lonergan to depart, and then I shall ask you in a couple of minutes to call your next witness. Mr. Cameron, sorry, just before we start, just in terms of understanding and managing expectations, you had obviously indicated more time than we're going to have this afternoon to take your witness to evidence in chief. So I'm assuming that that will resume again on Monday. Tuesday even, yes, sorry. I'm not, it's bad enough adding extra hours to the day, not extra days to the inquiry.
So I appreciate we've only got an hour till the deadline. Should we see with a fair wind whether we can get there in an hour, given a much longer estimate? I think we might probably go just over into Tuesday, but
Okay,
so don't hold out hopes too much, but it's not going to be the full 2.5 hours that we're given.
Okay, it's just so I understand what's
Yes,
what
we're
next about the programme. Okay, well in that case I'll hand over to you.
building up our credits at the moment and we'll take them up later. But I've got a few extras. So Mr. Baker, I'd like to first of all introduce you to the inquiry. First of all, you're Joe Baker, are you?
I am.
And you have a proof of evidence, summary and a rebuttal, which we've all got, and your qualifications and experience set out at 1.1 on page 4 of the main proof. You set out your academic qualifications, and you are professionally, you're a fellow of both the Chartered Institute of Logistics and Transport and Chartered Institution of Highways and Transportation. You've got 35 years transport planning experience, primarily working in consultancy. Earlier in your career, you were a project engineer for major trunk road schemes. You then worked in and led the West Midlands Joint Data Team. You worked for Mott MacDonald, and now you are the senior project manager responsible for this scheme, with responsibility for all aspects of the development of the scheme. Is all that correct?
Yes, that is correct.
And we know that there is a statement of truth on your proof, summary and rebuttal. Are the contents true
Yes, they are.
and correct?
Yes.
Now, what I'm going to do first, which might slightly add to the time, is to pick up a few points that arose this morning where Mr. Lonergan passed some matters on to you, and I'm going to raise them now while they're fresh in the mind, although it doesn't slightly interrupts the flow, so that we've got the answers, noted them down, and we don't forget them. First of all, the reference to a disused railway. Is that correct?
Whether there was a reference, I'm not sure. There is no disused railway on the corridor of the scheme.
Thank you. Lighting on the route and the proposals, and I appreciate the details are not for consideration at the moment, but for the purposes of the environmental assessment, can we just turn that up and look at the assumptions that were made, which is slightly different from what is proposed. It's what has been assessed on the basis of the information known at the moment. So we need to go to the main volume of the ES, which is core document 11001. And in that document, if we go to page 26, please.
You said 26?
26, sir. Have you got that, Mr. Baker?
Yes.
3.3.8, there's a heading lighting, and what does that tell us about lighting that is envisaged?
So the proposal is to use lighting when there is an interaction with third parties. So lighting will be provided at locations such as highway junctions, bus stops and travel hubs. We may well use solar studs, which are very low form of luminosity to provide along the active travel route, but we won't be providing lighting along the length of the route, primarily for ecological purposes, because of the impact on wildlife like bats and other creatures.
So, going back to the question, which
Yes.
is what has been assessed,
Yeah.
in the ES, use LED technology designed to minimise both vertical and horizontal light spillage, and it will only be installed in areas of high use, junctions with highways, bus stops and the travel hub. That's what's
Yeah.
been assessed.
Yeah.
And you've then answered the question on what's envisaged. Next question is on how do you control people driving their cars onto the proposed busway? And it's a matter of terms of the order, so I'm just going to draw the inspector's attention to it. But there's Article 45, as far as I can follow the track changes, because I think it was 46 at one stage. I don't ask you to turn it up, sir, but if you would like the reference, it's CD102G, page 35, and it creates an offence of trespassing on the busway, and that's a criminal offence. But getting down more to the what's envisaged, Mr. Lonergan referred to potentially using vehicle number plate recognition technology. Is that what is envisaged?
Yes, that is.
And what would happen if somebody was seen trespassing, committing this offence?
So vehicle number plates would be collected at entrance and exit points. If they were not on an approved white list, which is a list of vehicles with approved access, then those would be passed over for enforcement, potentially, as Mr. Cameron says, under the bylaws associated with the order. But there is an alternative which could be considered, which would be through decriminalised enforcement at the junctions as well. So there are two different ways we could consider. If there is a persistent case of infringement, clearly we can consider whether or not, for example, there would be police interception from time to time. We're all aware of police resources, but the police will enforce crimes where there are persistent problems. We are not currently envisaging solutions such as vehicle traps or gates, mainly because these all introduce complexity, but there are other alternatives which could be considered if there are persistent problems.
Just for the record, I didn't in my question refer to a bylaw. I referred to an offence in the order itself, so
Sorry.
it's not under a bylaw, it's would be under the statutory
Sorry.
instrument.
Transport planner rather than lawyer, I'm afraid.
Well, perhaps listen to the questions as well. Next question is on gates and fences, which have been raised this morning with Mr. Lonergan. What is envisaged in terms of gates, fences or other barriers to prevent people or not to prevent people going on the track?
So in terms of the borders of the scheme, as was alluded to this morning, Mr. Franklin, who will be giving evidence later in the inquiry in relation to property, has been endeavouring to engage with landowners to agree with them both requirements for fencing and gates and crossing points. So there are a variety of solutions in mind depending on the needs of particular landowners, and of course one or two landowners who do not yet wish to, as is their right, engage in that discussion. So there is not a universal solution. It's something that's very much being developed through dialogue with landowners, and we are not currently considering a fence between the maintenance track and the busway, because we clearly want to be able to use it for purposes such as evacuation, but we are ensuring that there is the lateral spacing which is occupied by the swale, which provides the suds, the drainage. There are, as I think was discussed earlier, a couple of occasions where there is constricted space, but those are locations where there'll be slow speed running just as we approach junctions such as by Clare Hall.
Thank you. Now, we're going to go back to, I think that's all I'm going to ask you on matters that have arisen this morning. And now, just so you know where we're going, first heading I've got is evaluation of alternatives and consultation, and we're going to go through the history of the development of the scheme. And when we've done that, which will take a little bit of time, we're going to go to respond to points made by a number of objectors, and we will see how we get on, but most of the time is going to be spent on the history of the evaluation of alternatives. So I'm going to start, please, with your proof of evidence 4.4.3. Page 18, and we've got stage 1. So, and I'm going to adopt the headings from here, your stages.
Yep.
So when I'm asking you questions. And we can see at 4.4.3 that there was an initial long list of 34 options. So that's where we're going to start. And can we then just take up core document 12007, which is, and we need in that document to go to page 7, please. And there's so this is part of the option appraisals report, part 1, and there's a figure 1, options appraisal methodology, which gives us a chart diagram which takes us from initial brainstorm 34 options through. And can you just give us an overview on how much time and how much effort has been put into considering all these options and the process followed? We can follow the arrows, and perhaps if you, without too much detail, just take us through the arrows.
Yeah, so in terms of stage 1 up to SOBC, the strategic outline business case, there was an initial sort of brainstorming of a very wide range of options broadly in the corridor from the west of Cambridge towards St Neots. So very wide-ranging, looking at what I'd call felt tip lines on maps and areas rather than detailed schemes. 34 different variants on options were identified and were sifted down rapidly into a short list of 8 that were run through a wider workshop with county involvement. That workshop led to actually an expansion towards 11 options, further assessed. They then came down to 4 options, and this was all in an initial corridor study undertaken in 2014. Then in 2015, on the basis of that, it became split into 2 sections, and this will recur, or 2 phases, a couple of times in the study, where we split into phases 1 and 2 east and west of the Madingley Mulsh roundabout. The area phase 1 to the east of it being the area that I think is of most debate within the study that goes past Coton. And that then led to a consultation in 2015, which was the first of 4 consultations on effectively 6 options or in permutations. So both west and east of Madingley Mulsh, there were options that were dubbed north, central and south, and you will find those options if I find the reference for you.
Should we go to Do we need to go to core document 10603? And we've got the consultation leaflet which sets it out.
Yeah, on page 3.
So core document.
Yes, core document 1.06.03. And we'll go to page 3 of 3, and this is, and we can see options west and east of the Madingley Mulch roundabout.
Yes, including options online. So again, looking not just north or south or online, but trying to look at a range of different options as is anticipated in the guidance.
And so, for example, taking into account CPPF's objection and others, you mentioned an on-road option. Was there an on-road option that went past the American cemetery
Yes.
on the A1303?
Yes, there was.
Thank you. So that got down to those options, and that's, you refer to Appendix B to the 2015 consultation report, which is what we've been looking at in 4.4.3. Then let's go on, if we can, to 4.4.5 in your proof. And then you say in September 2016, 5 options were presented in the strategic outline business case, and let's follow that reference to core document 818 so we can follow this through and see what was considered at each stage. So if you've got 818,
Page 65.
thank you. And well, we'll just wait till the inspectors have got to page 65, and there should be 8.4.1 scheme options. And that says 5 options have been assessed in this strategic outline business case as described below. And if we take option 1, which is shown in figure 8.3, is that on-road or off-road?
That is an on-road option.
And does it go down the A1303?
It does.
And then there are, well, you've told us there are 5 options. Other options, do they include off-road?
Yes, they do.
Thank you. So that's all I want to ask you about stage 1. We've then got stage 2, your proof of evidence 4.5, and those are park and ride options selection. So 2 options taken forward: Waterworks near Madingley Mulch and Scotland Farm.
Correct.
Let's then go to stage 3, and this is your 4.6.2. You refer to options north and south of the A428, A1303 corridor, and you refer to options, online options promoted by groups such as Cambridge Past, Present and Future. And can we just, well, we've got that public consultation between November 17 and January 2018. Let's take up the consultation documents. So if we can take up core document 106 06. That should be another leaflet, and that's got routes on it. Once we've got there, page 9. and 10. And does that include en route options?
Yes, there are two en route options. Option A is an on-road inbound bus lane, very comparable to what is currently proposed by CPPF. And option B is a tidal central bus lane, which at the time was the option supported by many local stakeholders, including, as I believe, CPPF.
And if we just go on in your proof, we're going to come back. We're still on stage 3, but can we just look at para 11.1.8 in your proof, please? And you say there, the argument that GCP has not considered on-road inbound bus lane is incorrect. And so you say, incorrect, say that GCP has not considered it. Question for you, have GCP consulted on such an option?
We have consulted upon and assessed it both at the SOBC and the OBC stages.
Thank you. So we're still on stage 3, and then in your proof at 466 you say in the last sentence the results of this stage, so stage 3 phase 1, are presented in OAR part 1 appendix A, and you give us the reference. So can we just take that up, CD 12007? We had looked at before, and if we go to PDF page 34, please. And what do we find at page 34? There's a figure 16 with options development and assessment. And what does that tell us there about the stage that you got to then?
Well, that's bringing us up to date from when we looked at the diagram previously that took us up to SOBC, which is the middle box, where we then went down to the 3 options that we consulted on. And as I've described, there were 3 options. Options A, which is the on-road inbound bus lane, equivalent to the one currently proposed by CPPF. Option B, which was one proposed by the community, as I understand it, including CPPF at the time, which was an on-road central tidal bus lane on the Madingley Road. This was not something proposed by GCP, it was proposed by the community, but we agreed to assess it on request on that basis. And option C, which was an off-road bus lane running between Madingley Mulsh and Grange Road, Cambridge. We didn't look at that stage at phase 2. It was about, we looked at the first stage and then we came back and looked at phase 2, which is the section west of Madingley Mulsh at a later stage, which we'll come to.
And then going back to your proof, that is referred to at 466, and then you say the second stage of the assessment, the optimised online and offline options were taken forward for direct comparison. And then you direct us at the end of 4.6.7 to core document 12008. So can we just go to that? part of the options appraisal report. And in that document, can we go to page 37 in the PDF? We've got a paragraph 4.2, and does that tell us the final options to be considered?
Yes, it does.
And what were the options there?
There were, in all 6 options, there was a do minimum, which was very minor intervention. There was 2 variants on each of the low cost and do something options because they involved alternative park and ride sites, one at the waterworks site near Badgingley Mulch and one at Scotland Farm, which is the current preferred site. The low cost option was effectively the on-road inbound bus lane as currently proposed by CPPF, and the do something option was an off-road option which is broadly equivalent, although it has evolved to the scheme which is now the preferred route. There was also what we called an illustrative comparator, which is what's called a high cost intervention that looked at the entire scheme, which effectively is to assess whether or not we should also look at the extension of the scheme west towards Cambourne as well.
So, pressing on with this process, at this stage, so we're still in stage 3, we've got phase 1, which is Madingley Mulch into Cambridge, phase 2, Cambourne to Madingley Mulch. That's 4.6.9 in your proof and the following paragraphs. How did you appraise the options for west of Madingley Mulch?
So, having done the appraisal to the east, we looked at 3 options to the west of Madingley Mulch. One option being an entirely segregated route to the north of the St Neots Road and south of the A428. One option which had bus lanes along St Neots Road, this is mainly through Hardwick, and one that had effectively buses running actually on the St Neots Road. Most of the rest of phase 2 is effectively common. It goes through, for example, Bourne Airfield. There is a section to the west of Scotland Farm where there really isn't a particular choice where to go. That was the area past Childerley Lodge, which we viewed on the site visit. So if like the area that the consultation and subsequent assessment looked at was primarily the treatment of the St Neots Road through Hardwick.
Thank you. So we then move on from stage 3. We're going to come back for 1 or 2 questions, but then we get stage 4, option refinement to reflect stakeholder issues, and quite a lot of the text here is on Grange Road access. I won't ask you that now because it's more appropriate to ask you that when Clare Hall come back. But can we just look at 477? And you say, following representation by CPPF, the alignment which bisected the waterworks site was diverted to run just to the southwest of the site in order to avoid trees protected by a tree preservation order. So, did you respond to a representation made by CPPF? Did you do something
Yes.
in response to it?
So an informal, I think the route as established for a long time had gone through the waterworks site adjacent to Madingley Mulch, which is now under consideration as a reservoir by Anglian Water and Cambridge Water. We received representation on the 4th of August 2021 from Mr Littlewood at CPPF, making an entirely sensible suggestion that we could now, because we were no longer considering a park and ride, make a minor amendment to the route to skirt round the southwest side of the waterworks. We were very happy to take that on board, and that was one of a number of minor amendments that have been made to the scheme over the years, sometimes because, and this relates to the discussion I think earlier with Mr Lonergan, where constraints were found, whether environmental, physical or anything else. So it's an illustrative of perhaps one of those issues.
Let's take another one of those issues, Coat and Orchard. And you say at 4.7.8 that a possible slight realignment to the north of the current scheme was proposed by GCP in October 2022, but not adopted following consultation with Houston Crest Properties Limited and CPPF. And if your reference there is CD 110.06, and if you just turn that up, we can see what you're talking about. And it says page 14, but in the PDF it's 17, I think.
Yes.
Got that, and just check that the inspectors have got that. So there's a drawing there, and we can see different alignments. Can you just tell us what happens? So a slight realignment was proposed in October 2022. Why was it proposed?
So at that stage we had representation made by Houston Crest Properties Limited regarding the impact of the trees which are now considered to be veteran trees. We were then made aware of those on the line of the route. There had been issues around access for earlier arboricultural surveys. We then looked at an alternative route, which, as you can see, is the one to the north of the current route, which would have gone through a gap between the trees we now recognise as veteran trees. Because of that change, we consulted with Cambridge Past, Present and Future and Coat and Orchard. The response we received from Coat and Orchard, you will find on the preceding page that they and Houston Crest Properties Limited felt that any alignment of the C2C scheme that transects Coat and Orchard, they objected to small modifications to the alignment to save felling of the very oldest trees is, in my opinion, a distraction from the enormous environmental impact of the proposed route taken as a whole. And CPPF, if you find on the page before that, in 2.4.3, suggested that whilst they didn't support either route, they had concerns with the northern option, given its increased severance of their fields west of the orchard and consequent reduced viability of the agricultural holdings, that its location higher up the slope of Madingley Hill made it more visible, and the increased scale of the necessary earthworks to accommodate that. So
is this 2.4.3?
that's 2.4.3. So overall, although we looked at that alternative, given the responses received, we did not pursue it.
And if we look at, you didn't pursue it, and if you look at 2.4.5, I think you've given the reasons.
Yes, there are a series of reasons, which I can go through if you like.
I think if the inspectors have got them in front of them, you don't need to read them out, but it's worth drawing attention to them. So this was we're on stage 4, and you set out the formal consultation and so on, and then at section, we go on in your evidence to page 26, and we get we get section 5, the preferred option. So we've been through at a bit of a canter through the options. I'm sure that when you were all actually going through the options, they didn't seem that speedy. Can I just, before we turn on to some more general questions, just going to turn up Mr. Littlewood in his evidence. You probably don't need to turn it up, but for reference, if anybody wants to check, it's paragraph 320 in Mr. Littlewood's proof of evidence. And he says, due to the considerable costs for us of taking forward Edward Lee's initial work to design an engineering stage, we tried to persuade the GCP to do this work. They refused to do this, citing that this was not required as part of the transport analysis guidance process, and because the C2C audit had indicated their optioneering process to date was acceptable. And so then Mr. Littlewood says that's why they commissioned the various people to draw up their alternative. In terms of an alternative inbound only bus lane on the A1303, have GCP considered and evaluated such a scheme?
We have consulted upon and evaluated an online inbound bus lane at both the SOBC stage and the OBC stage.
And Mr. Littlewood, while saying that, also says, and we'll taking this from his proof of evidence 3.5, that though you did it, the process and scoring used for the OAR assessment was flawed. 3.5, page 4. For example, the inbound bus lane and active travel route was scored down because the engineering specifications that were used as the basis for the assessment indicated that this could not be fitted into the highway boundary without impacts on the SSI American Cemetery and neighbouring properties. Since your initial work, there have been a number of different iterations of the CPPF scheme. We've heard reference in the inquiry so far to September 2024, I think, to April 2025, August 2025. Have any of those, on the basis of the advice you've received, demonstrated that there's a scheme which can be implemented within the highway boundary?
No, and Mr. Lonergan has discussed this at some length this morning. I don't propose to discuss the details of the engineering, but from a policy perspective, I cannot overstate the significance of the Madingley Road as a radial route into the city of Cambridge from the ongoing upgrades of the Black Cactus Gibbet route, the A428, linking into the M11, linking into the city centre. As we previously discussed, it links key junctions and therefore is considered a strategic route, the design of which needs to adhere to standards such as DMRB, and I cannot overstate the importance of safety in that regard. And whilst it is possible to consider departures from standards, and that is understood, those standards are in place to ensure that the applicant operates a safe highway system, and excessive departures from standards compromises that responsibility. So with this particular route, it really is not appropriate to look at substandard provision of lanes for such a key route. It's part of effectively the end of the Ox-Cam arc, which has been developed in various different ways by different governments, but is again one of those key priorities. It's going to be the main link to Cambourne and the housing growth which is proposed in Cambourne. So it is not a minor route elsewhere in the county where it might be appropriate to play what I would call fast and loose with the correct design standards.
So in your proof, you come to a conclusion, page 35, 9.3.5. You wrote this before you'd seen CPPF's latest scheme. Overall improvements to existing infrastructure alone would not provide the sustainable solution envisaged. Does that stand or not stand?
That still stands.
Thank you. So let's then turn, if we can, to the CPPF alternative, and Mr. Lonergan's responded to it. I don't ask you any engineering questions, but can we just look for a moment at, and again, I'm not going to ask you detailed questions about it. If we want to find out about it, we can ask those who've devised it, and we'll get a chance later on. We know about September 24, April 25, August 25. Can I ask you to take up core document 710, please? Do you have that? Just check everybody else does. Good. So that's headed Cambourne to Cambridge in-highway proposals for high-quality public transport scheme produced for Cambridge past, present and future by Edward Lee. And it's February 2021. And this document, who was it received by? Who was it sent to?
When we commissioned an independent audit of the business case process to effectively look at the work that had been done to date and provide verification for members before they made a decision on the scheme, the auditor who was appointed issued a call for information, and a wide range of stakeholders responded to that invitation and provided whatever material they felt the auditors needed to see. And this clearly was the document that CPPF, I presume, commissioned from Mr. Lee for submission to that audit.
And the audit, we've looked at this, is that the Amy Consulting audit?
Yes.
So and that's core document 827 for anybody's reference. Did the auditors have that document before them when they came to their conclusions?
Yes, they did.
And we've already looked at the conclusions, but let's have a look at that again. Do you have that core document 827 to hand? And page 76 PDF when you've got it.
I beg your pardon, what was the page number?
76, PDF 76. And paper 76. So we have that, and if you look at the audit conclusion and you go to the 4th paragraph, a number of alternative route options have been put forward and have been examined in this audit. It's important to stress, however, that the business case must balance local concern with the wider strategic goals, and the GCP has complied with national guidance on how to balance local and national considerations in relation to schemes such as this. So, amongst the alternative options considered by the auditor, did that or did it not include the CPPF scheme?
Yes, it included, well, both the CPPF scheme and the previous work undertaken by the GCP, notably the SOBC and OBC, which, as I've alluded to previously, also included on-road bus lanes.
Okay, thank you. I'm now just going to, having trawled through the consultation process, I'm going to go to a number of, well, to some detailed points that have arisen. Bus journey times, if we can. And I don't know whether you can help on the issue that arose earlier in the inquiry. So we need to take up the transport assessment, which is core document 125. I think it's the 125.1, sorry. And if we go to page 49, we start, this is bus journey times we're dealing with, 8.4. Do you have that? Got that. And we're also going to need, just to be difficult, because this is the comparison that was raised earlier in the inquiry, and I want your assistance on it. So we need also to go to core document 120.09. Which is the options assessment report, and we need to go to page 48 on that. So if everybody's able to have both open, points have been made in relation to the differences between some of the bus journey times in the transport assessment and in the outline business case. Are you able to help on that?
Yes, I can. So in looking over these documents, there are a couple of observations. I think there was a question raised perhaps the day before yesterday about the source for the documents or the tables 8.7 to 8.10 in CD 125.01. There is a reference to those coming from the outline business case. I think we should correct that fact. They come from the modelling work that was done for the outline business case addendum, but those tables themselves do not come from the outline business case. So that is a correct comment. They were work that was done with, Derek, get back to that issue, the F-series model for the outline business case addendum, whereas the previous tables in OAR3 were from previous work done using, I believe, the E-series model. But also what is important is they are two different sets of data. So the data is correctly labelled in CD 125.01. It's Cambourne to Grange Road for 2041. But the data in CD 120.09 was for Cambourne to the city centre, to Parker Street, for the year 2035. So it is correct to say there are inconsistencies between the two tables because they were looking at data for different journeys for different design years. So it is understandable that they are unlikely to be the same.
Could you just give me the second date, please?
Yes,
For
the
the city
second
centre.
date was 2035.
Thank you.
Thank you. Now, next question I'd like to ask you about requires us to go to core document 2908. And this is one of the additional documents that Mr. Parker put in. This is about the model for the Cambridge sub-region. And I'm not going back to ask detailed questions about this, but can we just go to page 11? Perhaps we don't need to go to that, but this is the document which contemplates a new sub-regional model. And was the work carried out in accordance with these recommendations to create a new model?
The work was certainly carried out. I'm not in a position to comment whether it precisely follows the recommendations,
Yeah.
but broadly speaking, yes, the work was carried out.
And the question I wanted to ask you is a much more simple one, which was how long did that work take?
From the issue of that report in October 2022, it was almost 2.5 years before the model was actually complete, validated and operational. As was alluded to by Mr. Whitehouse, from that point of view, a report was issued, funding had to be procured, surveys needed to be scheduled, planned, organised in, as Mr. Whitehouse said, a neutral month. Thereafter, the data needs processing, the model needs to be built, the model needs to be validated. These things are not tasks to be undertaken lightly. That work has been undertaken, but as someone who has built large transport models, I can attest this is not a task that is done quickly.
Thank you. And we note your past experience in the West Midlands with transport models, leading a team.
Yes.
Next question, and we're getting towards the end, and we may come in within the inspector's deadline, but let's not get hopes up too much. Delay, suitable subject now. And this is scheme delivery timescale. Mr. Lonergan said it would take 2 years to construct. Mr. Sadler, in slightly different context, referred to 3 to 5 years. How long will it take?
Construction is intended to be of the order of 2 years. I think from the conversation this morning there may be some confusion. The date of 2031 was cited. That date relates to a prior information notice which the County Council has issued in accordance with the Procurement Act. It is something we're required to do, and to assure compliance with the Procurement Act, an extension period is allowed. I believe, and we can provide as necessary the procurement notice, I don't think it's particularly helpful, that the end date on that procurement notice was 2028 with an indication of the potential extension as far as 2031 to ensure Procurement Act compliance. That was a prior information notice for procurement purposes. That was not an engineering schedule.
And in terms of delay, so 2 years to construct, procurement process extended 2031, but if the Secretary of State makes the order, how long will it take after that?
Well, procurement is not something you can entirely predict, but typically we will likely, as you can see, the procurement, the prior information notice has been issued. We are undertaking soft market testing, not just on this scheme. We have multiple schemes, so the sort of market industry engagement that's required is ongoing. We would need to set up a design and build contract. I'm not the procurement lead. I'd say it could be, say, 6 months, and then the 2 years to actually construct the scheme is the sort of order we'd be anticipating, again, depending on when we get an outcome.
And no doubt all these things slip a bit, so we're 2.5 years at best.
Yeah.
At worst, well,
I wouldn't put a figure on it, but I would just observe that whatever you do, be it online or offline, is subject to delay. And there was an allusion previously to street works requirements. Major closures of the A1303 for roadworks for a very extended period of time would not be approved lightly. As per the extensive discussions earlier today, it is difficult to say things are impossible, but the street works team at the County Council will review any applications for extensive works carefully, looking at what other works are required in the vicinity. So it's very difficult to put timescales on things, but whether you're working online or offline, all schemes are prone to delay, and in some ways, for good or for bad, working in a new offline site is often easier because there's less interaction with existing utilities and the like.
so 2.5 years from order. Now, if the order was not made and you had to start again, Mr. Freeman was quite pessimistic about how long it would take. But do you have any views on how long it would take? I mean, there'd have to be a decision as to what to do, which
There would
require
have to,
democratic involvement.
So the process would be led by the GCP Executive Board, who would have to effectively make a decision whether to proceed, and if so, how. We would then have to consider what to do next. I think it is important to remember, and it again has maybe been glossed over, that in looking at the entire scheme with the CPPF alternative, we have thorny issues such as the park and ride to consider, because the park and ride is needed regardless. The Transport Works Act powers enable us to deliver the scheme, the park and ride ancillary infrastructure. Without those powers, effectively, we don't have easy recourse to compulsory purchase order. We have to go through the conventional planning route, which creates its own challenges, and effectively you need to restart that process because it's a new scheme, it needs a new environmental statement, you need to consult on that, you need to consult on what you're doing. I would not wish to put a timeline on it other than it would be a significant delay, and it would be up to the decision of elected members whether they chose to go down that route. Finances are obviously constrained, and they would decide whether that was something they wanted to spend their money on, particularly if the view was taken it would not be an end product which would enable Bourne Airfield to proceed. They might then decide alternative infrastructure would unlock alternative sites if Bourne Airfield could not be delivered. So it's difficult, but I'm not an elected politician, I can't say how long, but it would be a lengthy and very challenging process.
Lengthy? Years?
Years and years. Years and years. I unfortunately, having worked on this scheme for 8.5, which is not its entire length, given that we would need land, and I think the land take along the Madingley Road, the challenges of that, once you actually design the scheme in 3D, as Mr. Lonergan has explained, once you consider the interaction with constraints such as the SSSI and the American Cemetery, and all the challenges that ensue there, particularly the acquisition of any inch of land from the American Cemetery, which I understand, I've been told, and I cannot attest to this, that it actually may need American government approval. It will be extremely challenging, so I really couldn't say, but one can imagine there would be probably another lengthy public inquiry, the outcome of which is not for me to predict.
Once you got to it, once you decided what to do, you've done your environmental assessment, you've done your consultation.
5 years, 10 years, it's, if we got there.
Thank you, Mr. Baker. Those are all the questions I've got for you at this time. And I think you'll probably have to wait for cross-examination till Tuesday.
Thank you very much. Is there anything else you want to- well, I haven't got anything else I need to raise. Thank you very much for keeping us to time. That's been helpful, so we can finish when we anticipated to. Unless there's anything pressing that anybody needs to raise. Oh, hang on. Oh, yeah, sorry. Just quick. I assumed you'd finished evidence in chief, or have you just reached a point?
No,
Yeah.
Finished evidence in chief. I mean, I was tempted to say, can I hold it over in case I think of something else, but I'm not going to do that. We've got that.
Thank you for clarifying that. In that case, I shall close the inquiry, and as we previously, adjourn. Yes, not close. Sorry, I'll be a bit premature after only 1 week. Adjourn the inquiry, and we'll resume at 9:30 as we discussed on Tuesday. So thank you very much, and safe journeys, everybody.